Hi, everybody. Welcome once again to my basement. Um, if that's the way to go, I guess. So my name is Eric Stevens. I'm the founder of hashtag Higher Higher Ed and hashtag Change Higher Ed. This started out as a plea for people to connect for an hour in June, and turned into in August. We had a 2-day event with a whole bunch of speakers and a whole bunch of panels, and a whole bunch of workshops. And now I want to keep doing it because I think these are some, it's a really cool genre. I love talking to people, and I really enjoy hearing other people's expertise about, honestly, things that I need to learn about myself. Last week was our first episode. We interviewed Chris Katerine, author of Leaving Academia, Practical Guide, and we had 2 winners from our raffle. We're getting those sent out this week, and it was a lot of fun to see how many people reached out afterwards to just kind of say thank you and to acknowledge that some of these conversations, should be happening. That the ones that we are happening that are having. And I also just want to just send, in addition to that, thank you for everybody that's involved. And I'll introduce what we have coming up too. I just want to say thank you for tuning in a real sincere way. The thing that I've been telling people throughout this whole experience of me going through unemployment from academia is that you need to connect with people. You really, really need to connect. And so often it feels like our academic community just isn't there, doesn't know how to be there. And that makes sense because it's a new frustrating thing for everybody. But there are people out there who care. Our guests today, Tameka and Laura and Nicole, are some of these people that I've met who are willing to share their knowledge. I'm excited for this panel. It's all about information design, instructional design, and learning what we can do, either going into it freelance or going into an actual gig or the healthcare economy. And I'm actually pretty excited about this myself because I got a call back, or I guess email back today, about a position that I need to put some paperwork together to apply for the next level of an instructional designer position myself. And so I'm really excited to learn with all these wonderful people. Before we get started, I'll just introduce what we're doing for next week as well. I have Samantha Klein, Vicky Sherwood, and Jennifer Beach are going to be joining me talking about recognizing when it is time to leave academia. Some of the things we talked about are things you should do when you want to leave. This panel is going to focus on what we are doing, or what we need to do to recognize and to admit that it's time to kind of escape what some might call a hellhole and others call heaven. It just depends on if you have tenure, I guess. So with that, I'm really excited. Please, as you can see, scrolling at the bottom, ask questions. Each one of our panelists have donated a 30-minute coaching session to help you figure out what you need to do to make this transition into instructional design. And if you want to be entered into the raffle, we'll announce those winners live at the end. Please submit a question for us and ask your questions because we're here to learn. So I'm going to bring each of them onto the screen and I'll let them introduce themselves. Here we go. We have Tameka, Laura, and Nicole. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Nicole, let's get started. Can you just introduce yourself, and then we'll just kind of go around and ask some fun questions.
Sure. Thanks for having me back, by the way. I am really excited to be here. My name is Nicole Papaioannou Lugara. I am the owner of Your Instructional Designer, which is sort of the freelance consulting arm of my business, and the Upskill Experience, which is our learning network, where I do more of train the instructional designer type of work. And I've been freelancing for 4 years now, and I don't plan on going back. So I'll tell you more about that later.
Awesome. Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Hoyer. I am an instructional designer for a healthcare advocacy company called Accolade. And I'm also a teacher career coach. I help teachers who want to transition to other careers figure out where they may want to go and how they're going to get there.
And Tameka.
Hi there, I'm Tameka J. Harris. I am a senior instructional systems designer at a healthcare company in Baltimore, Maryland. I also have my own instructional design brand, Hello Tameka Prismatic ISD, and I'm just happy to be here.
I'm so happy that you're all here too. And here's my number one reason why. Other than all the other stuff that I was saying, I think that this group of people knows how to work the gig economy, like how to take the things that we took from our education, our background, and apply them in a way that is valuable. I've not had a lot of experience teaching outside of academia, other than a little bit, and it was such a great experience to have people who are just coming to you ready to learn. And so I'm really excited because I'm here ready to learn. And we're just gonna the way that we'll kind of go forward. We'll ask a few questions, and I'll moderate that. I am not the expert here. I'm going to jump off the screen so I can learn and take notes too. And I'll just, whenever I'm on the screen, I'm going to be there to kind of transition to the next thing. And again, thank you so much for those of you who are joining us. Let's see if we actually have some comments. Great panel. Thank you, Brittany. I agree. And I think that things are funny as well. Yes. Oh yeah. Hello. Yeah. It's certain. Yes. It is. Okay. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. We'll go ahead and start with Tameka with this question. And then we'll just kind of go our way around. What is your academic background? And how did you get to the point where you are right now?
I have a bachelor's in communications media management. I have a master's in entertainment business, and I also have another master's in instructional design and technology. I fell in through instructional media. I used to produce videos and broadcasts and things like that. So I'm a broadcast producer turned instructional designer. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Awesome. I can go next.
Yes, please.
Okay, so my story is a little bit longer. My bachelor's is in middle level education with concentrations in language arts and science. So I was a middle school English teacher, and then I kind of decided that wasn't the best fit for me. So when I was looking into what I really enjoyed about teaching and what made me get into it, I realized that I really love the lesson planning and curriculum development side of things. So then I decided to try out instructional design. So I got an internship, oddly enough, at the company where I am now. It made me fall in love with instructional design. When my internship was over, I couldn't stay. So I moved on to higher education instructional design, and then I went back to corporate instructional design. So I've been kind of all over the place. But I do have my master's in instructional design and technology now.
I would say, a super nerd, and that's how I ended up where I am today. So I have 3 degrees in English, all in different areas of English, but basically at some point during my PhD, I was adjuncting and working in a writing center as a writing tutor, writing consultant, and making about $18,000 to $24,000 a year, which goes really far in the New York City metropolitan area, let me tell you. And I just decided I couldn't really deal with that anymore. You know, I was in my late 20s and I wanted to be able to start making bigger life decisions. And so I took it upon myself to start looking for other jobs, and I applied to like marketing jobs that I had no business applying to before I landed on instructional design. And I spent about 2.5 years working for a learning and development agency that focused on adaptive online learning. So I started there as an instructional designer, and then eventually was managing a department of about 15 folks, mostly instructional designers with a few support staff. And then after that, took on freelancing, thinking I would go back to full-time work, and this is where I am now. I love it.
Awesome. Thank you. So here's what I'm appreciating in this moment is the variety of our backgrounds that we have. I think Nicole and I are along the same route, as like went through, like got the degrees and the PhD. Like maybe I'll be a professor one day, and now not. But then we also have Tameka, like your broadcasting experience.
Yeah.
And then also like just the K through 12 teaching. And I love that what is common about higher education and what is common about these different things is this love of learning. And I think this is why learning itself is so transferable, and why I think there's a lot of folk who'd be interested in a topic such as this, because it is so transferable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we all recognize that it's transferable, but it's a matter of translating that value.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so let's come to our next question, kind of going into it, because a lot of us, we really enjoy teaching. We enjoy working with people and that learning process. And so I think a lot of us can relate to the things that we enjoyed about working in a classroom, like a traditional classroom. But let's go with this one. Is like, so right now, what is the most fulfilling part of your job? What are the things that that you love, and what drives you to do it? That you can that equate to what's happening. And let's go ahead and start with Lara this time.
Awesome. So there's kind of two things, and I see them as going hand in hand. So what I love about my job right now is mostly where I work, I'm allowed to kind of expand my horizons and bring in creative ideas and use like teaching stuff that I've used. For example, anybody who's on the call who is a teacher is very familiar with Kahoot. A couple of years ago, I brought that to the company that I work with. They had never heard of it before, and it just kind of like blew everybody's mind. So I love that I can bring in things that are seen as unconventional. And then I also love that by doing those unconventional things, I can help the people that I work with do their jobs even better, which really speaks to me, because the people that I work with right now, like I said, is a healthcare advocacy company. So they're helping people manage their own healthcare. So that's really important to me, and being able to help them do that in a really great way fulfills me.
Yeah, I would say what Laura said is that last comment was totally, I mean, both of them, but totally spot on. Like, I love the part where you get the final reaction and it's like, oh, wow, like I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have made it work. And you've helped them solve their problem. I mean, it's training or it's learning design, depending on, where you are. But at the end of the day, you're helping to maybe train someone to get a job promotion they couldn't have ever gotten without that education, or you're helping somebody to, do outreach to parents of children with autism. Like, you're doing all of these things and you're just doing it through learning. And so you can amplify your impact in ways that you can't necessarily do when you just have 25 students in a classroom. I think that's definitely the thing that keeps me moving, and meeting cool people. I mean, I've had a chance to meet Tameka before, and it's been awesome. And I'm glad to meet Laura today.
Yeah, I side with Laura and Nicole. There are so many things that make me super excited about this industry and my opportunity to serve people through education. I never saw myself as a teacher per se. I have a lot of educators that I grew up watching in my family, and I was just like, I want to do something different. I thought I, naturally to the stage and entertainment. And it just kind of came right back around to education. So I'm passionate about seeing concepts and real learning come to life for people, for learners everywhere, creating like that. I love adding color to black and white type of content. So like compliance, a lot of drab stuff people don't want to talk about or deal with. I love seeing color applied to those things and people just kind of looking at those dreary black and white type topics, legal, all that kind of stuff with a new eye. There were some very much some other benefits to this industry that I enjoyed too, which is like, the flexibility that you have to really take charge of your own career. You could work as an employee, you could work as a freelancer, as a consultant. There's so many things you can do with this career and put yourself in the driver's seat versus kind of wait for jobs and opportunity to open up. So it's a lot of different things that I'm passionate about, but those are a few.
Absolutely. And I just want to tack on that you can also, like, even in corporate environments, you can choose to work somewhere on a topic that you're passionate about. Like, for example, I work with healthcare, but you can work at nearly any large company that has instructional design. Everybody needs training. So I love that part of instructional design too.
Okay. I like a lot of this is resonating with me, and I can see what the things that you're kind of talking about, right? And I can see how it apply, like how I could do the same thing, right? The next question that we had on our little agenda of sorts was like, what from your background best prepared you for this career? But I think before we do that, I'm going to insert another question to that, like, what is it that you do exactly? Like, so like you're an instructional designer. Okay, great. Like, what is like the day to day of something that you can do? I'm
How much time do you have?
Yeah, I'm loving Tameka's like, ooh, okay. So let's go ahead.
This is the hardest
rest
question.
of the panel.
Yeah. So yeah, like let's what is it that or is that concrete thing? And we can kind of tie it in with that other question, right? Like, here's this thing that I do day to day, and here's where I learned how to do it, or like how I was able to adapt a skill from one industry to this one. Tameka, can we start with you?
Of course you could.
Oh, thank you. Or
I'll tell you this. I'll
Yeah.
never forget the day that I had the opportunity for my grandmother, who was 92 at the time. She's since passed on. But she asked me what I do. And it was almost like the hardest thing in my life to get her to understand. She herself was an educator, so she is used to understanding teacher language. So I said, Granny, what I basically do is like is what a teacher is to a classroom. I just do it for businesses. And that kind of satisfied her. You help people learn. You help them fill their performance gap. You help them get from point A to point B. You help take them on a journey from what they know to what they need to know, or what they need to unlearn to what they need to learn. I try to speak about what I do in the most common layman terms as I can. I only get fancy with my fancy instructional designer people who love saying those long titles, So, we help illuminate learning. We help to distribute that learning. We help to connect people with what they are missing out on in regards to what they need to do their job better. That sometimes is even hard for me to say, but that's as best as I can put it in my own terms.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of the time when I'm talking to teachers or former teachers, I explain that I do the lesson planning and curriculum development for a corporation. So where I am in my particular position, and this isn't the same for all companies, but I do, like, again, the lesson planning and curriculum development. Somebody else is teaching the content. So I'm not in front of the classroom. I'm not the face of the education. I'm usually giving the lesson plan to somebody else to teach, which is the way I like it. It's not the same for everybody, but luckily enough where I am, we do have in-person learning, and we also have e-learning. So basically in the day-to-day, somebody in the business comes to me and they go, my people don't know about X, Y, and Z, and I need them to know by tomorrow, which is usually what happens. And then I go, okay, and I ask a lot of questions about, like, how do you know that they need training? What do they need to be able to do by the end of it? All of that stuff. And then based on that, I build either an e-learning solution, or I build videos, or I build a live training session, whatever is going to help them meet their goals fastest and in the best way possible. That's the easiest way I can explain it. Although we can all agree it changes from day to day what we do.
It does.
100%. Sorry, my other half is totally, like, really intensely into Overwatch right now. So apologies if you get more than just my conversation here. But I think Tameka and Laura have both done a fantastic job of explaining what's essentially like a really complex and ever-moving set of tasks that go into doing the training. For me, I think the only difference is just because I don't work for a company. I work with clients, and they're all different. I mean, I have solo entrepreneurs and I have enterprise clients, and they all want different things. And so in addition to the instructional design work, kind of being the learning expert for the subject matter expert, I'm also, my own marketing person, my own bookkeeper, my own project manager, my own salesperson. And from a teaching background, that might sound really scary. And I say this for folks who are thinking about just going straight into the gig economy. But in a classroom, you have to learn to sell your ideas to your students all the time and make it meaningful and relevant to them, to talk to administrators, to talk to parents, to talk to your, whoever is sort of giving you the funding to do what you need to do. So you've got the sales skills, the marketing skills. Again, it's just like the what's in it for me, constantly trying to answer that question. The bookkeeping, you can always Google or hire someone to do. And the project management, I mean, teachers and educators you're just constantly juggling a million tasks. And so most of my educator colleagues have been exceptionally organized and have had schedules and all these things. And that's really what it takes. So I know you can do the learning and curriculum development, learning a few extra tech tools, no big deal, you do that, but you've got all the skills if you just package it the right way. And so I think teaching and designing multimedia for learning, those things prepare you for instructional design. Like You're ready.
Okay. That was kind of the answer I was kind of anticipating. It was just this there's a whole bunch of different things that it could be. And I think that right now, like we had another question, but I think some of these questions from the audience are really pertinent to what we're doing. But real quick, Colleen wants to all us to make a TikTok dance to Kahoot. And so I'm just throwing that out there as, for plan B. But okay, so we'll go with this idea that it is complex and there are lots of things that are going around. That are happening. And so let's start. I want to kind of like address this question that Brittany put up is like when we're talking about these different things like curriculum development or corporate trainer, learning and development, instructional designer, training and development. Like what exactly, like, is there a difference between these things? Like what is the difference there?
If there is a difference,
There's absolutely a difference between training, being a trainer, and I think maybe, and I don't want to reshape her question because there are a lot of different terms thrown out here, right? There's e-learning, there's training, there's instructional design. A lot of these things are neighbors and they touch and agree and they blend, but a lot of some of these things also have their own world to them, and have this separate kind of way that they function. E-learning is certainly a function within learning and development, and you use instructional design to create e-learning. Likewise, you use instructional design to create training, and training sits in learning and development, and it all sits in education. So it's like sectors, areas, and functions that kind of can be intertwined and blended, but also work separately or work interdependently, or independently on their own. Training, and I know, Nicole, you can help me out here, but one of the things that I'm learning right now is how different training, me teaching someone content, whether I'm standing in front of them or I am facilitating their learning, is way different than someone who is a part of an e-learning opportunity where it is computer-based. The software is basically giving me my learning. I'm connecting with a computer in order to get into my learning moment. In training, there's a facilitator, maybe there's a producer, maybe there's the material. There are all of these different aspects and components that have to agree in order for the learning to actually make sense for the learner. So yeah, there's education. What sits inside that is learning and development. What sits inside that in learning and development, it's almost like those nesting eggs, one inside the other. Education, there's learning and development, there's instructional design, and then there are sectors of training, e-learning, and so forth.
Okay. Yeah, what I'm really liking about this is that we're understanding that it's a very nuanced area, which means that, like, if it's something that you're interested in doing, there's probably something even more specialized that you can even get into. Like, if the thing that you love to do is standing in front of a classroom, you can do that, and you don't have to worry about grading. Like that, I mean,
Absolutely.
it's beautiful. Right? Or the thing that you love is training other teachers. Then that's a specialty that you can do, that you can pick up. Let's to kind of like go along with that same question. We can hear from Laura and Nicole on this. This is from Sammy. She's asking, what other careers are adjacent to instructional design that benefit highly from teaching and human development skills? So some of these, like, if you're not like, I'm the instructional designer, like, who are some of the people that you're working with, so that, like, other people can start investigating those jobs?
Sure. So where I work, like I mentioned, I'm the instructional designer, so I do like the lesson plans.
I know, Laura and Nicole, you could speak to this. This is just off the top of my head. Some other departments that are sisters to ours are creative departments. So people who might be really highly interested in, say, video, graphics, design, UX, UI, anything visual, audio, multimedia, we kind of sister with them. Perhaps also there is business side. So ROI, things like business success, bottom lines, measurement, evaluation, assessments, things like that. From a business standpoint, we also partner with, and then learning. So I don't want to take the center stage there, but I just wanted to just kind of add those types of ideas of jobs that are connected to human development.
Absolutely. There's also like learning specialists. Like I said, that's the title of the people that I work closely with, the people that I basically hand off my lesson plans to. But there are also people who are trainers who I also train. So not everybody in their role knows how to teach something in the most effective way. So I will hand it off to them, and they are more like subject matter experts, but they do the training for me. There's also more like HR type roles where you can focus on developing people and helping them grow their potential through training. But there's tons of different options, and like we hit on before, there are subtle nuances between the titles too.
I think that covers pretty much the large gamut of people I work with. Maybe just if you're not so much into the socializing and maybe not curriculum development, there's technical writers. As an instructional designer, I work with folks who just kind of specialize in scenario writing and script writing. And so there's definitely different entryways that you can take if you're interested in the learning fields. And kind of related to the question before, just, sometimes you'll see a corporation has a learning and development or a training and development department, and they're often honestly the same thing, different monikers. But within those departments is a whole bunch of jobs, like Tameka was saying, ranging from like business analyst to, Laura's example of learning specialist. And so you can just go on a company website and start looking at the jobs in their L&D and HR departments and see if anything piques your interest.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'm trying to figure out the best way. No, I don't need to figure out the best way to answer this. Like I put it up here. Never mind. Okay. So like we've been talking about these different things. We've been talking about that there are different, like it's like these nesting eggs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or things that are working together. There's all these different and these moving parts. If I have all of this experience teaching people, I have like teaching awards, and I'm really excited, about I love being in front of a classroom, and I have this job that I'm hoping that I'm going to apply for or do this next level. like what are some of the vocabulary that you've experienced from your from your education, and how does that like what would be those like translate like those key words that you'd want to use that are going from academia to industry?
So many.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just to take those terms and translate them into business terms. So in corporate, maybe in higher ed, this doesn't apply if you're still working in the higher ed space, but like in corporate, you probably wouldn't say teaching. Like they're not going to be that impressed that you taught a classroom of students. They're going to want to see like facilitated learning, developed curriculum, designed multimedia. If you can give them numbers, it's even better. So if you have taught over 10,000 students over 20 years of tenure, put that number down. It's super impressive. If you're looking to work in corporate, they're usually looking to see that you can increase their revenue, reduce their cost, or make them look better to their market. And so if you can do any of those three things and just flip your teaching language to show how that works, then you're golden.
If you are in academia and you're looking to either go in corporate America or government, wherever have you, one of the major tips that I share with people is look at the job market. Look up maybe 3 different jobs in the market you want to enter. So if that's corporate America, look at 3 job announcements and see the language that they're using and use some of that verbiage, not word for word, but use that as some way of knowing the kind of lingo that each of these sectors use. Like Nicole says, academia world talks a lot about teaching, classroom. That's a little bit different in corporate America, which may also be different from government, which may be different from, other sectors that people are interested in going into, private industry, whatever have you. So look up some of the job announcements that are already floating out there. They have fabulous verbiage on them that you can flip and use for yourself.
And to add to Tameka's point, I totally wholeheartedly agree with that. But in researching what you want to do, I highly suggest connecting with people on LinkedIn and talking to them about what it is that they do every day. So that way you fully understand the role. And then when you fully understand the role, you can explain your teaching experience better. So for example, with instructional design, 2 of the main acronyms that we use are ADDIE and SAM. And they're really similar, but it's basically just an acronym to describe the steps of instructional design, which teachers do every day. You do ADDIE every single day when you lesson plan. So it's just a matter of taking that mindset of, oh, they want to see how I analyzed, how I designed, how I implement, and what the results of those things were. Then you can break apart one lesson and show those things in that resume.
Mm-hmm.
Full disclosure, before I got my instructional design job, I had never heard of instructional design. And I knew I had an interview on Monday. So I went on Google for 2 hours and I looked up ADDIE, Gagne's 9 events, and I think like Richard Mayer's multimedia learning, multimedia learning principles. And then I went and nailed the job interview. But I honestly had never heard of those terms before.
Which Nicole is what you call being resourceful, which is totally a skill that every instructional designer needs to have.
Absolutely. Yeah, but if you do the research and you find those terms on your own, or even ask somebody who's currently doing the role, like what does that look like, it makes it a lot easier to translate your skills that way. And to Nicole's point too, when I was leaving teaching and going into like instructional design, to me, they were so similar that I could use terms like differentiation. And all of the business people I talked to are like, what in the world is that? And it's something that you should do in instructional design, but maybe they're not familiar with the terms. So it's kind of the same way with instructional design. You just got to familiarize yourself with the terms. You're already doing most of those things. Yep. It's just a matter of showing that to an instructional design hiring manager that you've done those things. Exactly. You just call them something else.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. I think that one of the things that I feel like if we could bestow, like if you could do anything right now if you're thinking about going into instructional design, is to research it. Like don't go into that meeting, or don't go into the application with the attitude of like, well, I have a PhD, therefore, or like, oh yeah, like I was a K through 12, like I taught middle school English, therefore I already know how to do this. It takes an act of humility, in a very real way, to say like, okay, I need to be able to translate this so I need to speak their language. I cannot expect them to learn my language so that they can like bend their corporate business to me. No, like you have to like go and be that team player.
I also want to encourage teachers on a couple things. First of all, I think that you all are some of the most qualified people to do this work. I don't have a teaching background. I did some teaching, but I did not come from the teaching world. I think teachers absolutely are highly, qualified. And I've come across teachers who always kind of don't have that confidence about their own transition into this work. So if your confidence is low, I want to tell you right now, you can do this. This is for you if you want to do it. And the other thing that I thought about was, and it is escaping me right now, but we'll come back to it when it comes back. But it was good. I promise it was good.
Can I tack on?
I agree.
I want to tack on to the confidence thing.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Got delayed. But just that, like, when I left teaching, I think I was still very much in the like teaching salary mindset. So go research the salary and don't be afraid to ask for what it is, even if it's more than you were making. I mean, here in New Jersey, teachers actually make an okay salary in comparison to like when I was in California. I think they offered me $38,000 to teach, and that clearly wasn't going to work in Los Angeles. But don't be like I'm not going to negotiate because it's high. Like ask for what you're worth. If the thing says, can measure it on experience, you have experience. Just go for it. Don't feel like you got to hold back. You're not experienced. You are.
Absolutely. I coach my clients on this all the time with my career coaching business. But if you taught for 5 years and you did curriculum development, lesson writing for those 5 years, you have 5 years of experience. Like, to me, they're so similar that you can't say, well, like, oh, I haven't been a formal instructional designer, so I'm starting at the bottom. No, you're starting with 5 years of experience.
And that's the thing that I kind of forgot about that I wanted to just chime in on was to any of the teachers out there who think perhaps they have taught K-12, right? And they want to go into corporate America as an instructional designer. There is a way for you to translate your language so that you don't just automatically X yourself out from opportunity. Everybody can do something in this work. And a lot of it you learn on the job. So don't limit yourself in your head when you are looking at entering a specific sector or area in instructional design.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think to echo all of that and what you all are saying, recognizing that you do have value, like the things that you've done are amazing things, and that's very encouraging, right? I mean, that's an exciting thing. So we have a question that I think is very pertinent to what we're going on right here. This is from Nicole. And she asks if there are any new skills that we should be aware of that you had to learn that are not present in most higher ed roles. Like there are some things, like some terms that you've been kind of thrown out a little bit. Like what are some of those things that if somebody were to go like, okay, I need to research this thing, what would those be?
So I wouldn't say that there are any, like if you are teaching higher ed and you want to move into an instructional design role, I don't think that there are any specific teaching skills that you have to relearn, but there's a lot of technology that comes with it now that you would definitely have to look into. And the good news is a lot of it's fairly easy to learn and teach yourself, and you can do free trials online and there's tons of communities to help you. But I think for the most part, it's more technology you would have to teach yourself. I mean, if you taught kindergarten and you want to go into instructional design, you may have to brush up on adult learning, but for the most part, it's pretty transferable.
If I could add just one thing, I think for higher ed folks out there who are looking to transition into instructional design is probably to unlearn the fact that you don't have to have a course for everything. And so, you know, one of the things, and this is not to be facetious or anything like that. I did teach for a tiny semester at a university. But usually academia is all about you're a course farm. You are a farmer for courses. You breed, you nurture them, you know, and I think in other sectors, if you're looking to go into instructional design, not always is a course the answer or the solution. There are other solutions that you can consider for your learners.
That's a great point. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think those are like the two big things. I don't know if I would add too much more. I feel like I had ideas and now I can't.
I hope, of course, people didn't take that offensively. I wasn't trying to be offensive, but
no,
I think it's a farm.
I mean, it's a good point. It's like, I guess the big difference is, right, so even though we do this in higher ed, we don't use the language necessarily, but in business, it's about behavior change, not necessarily just about the pursuit of knowledge. And I think, you know, again, a lot of educators think about what can my students do with this information beyond the scope of my course. But in business, a lot of times they're looking to see that in measurable ways. And so that for me, it was like a big difference. And I don't know if everyone is this person, but this is not necessarily a tool, or you just kind of have to unlearn being a grad student if you are a super academic, just because I noticed, and again, this could just be me, but I noticed that the deeper I got into my degree, the more I sort of poked holes in things and like criticized things and like learned to be the smart student who could find the problem, but I wasn't necessarily solutions oriented, and I asked for permission a lot, and that could often like undermine my expertise if I was talking, you know, as a new manager to the VP. And so I really had to learn that criticism or like showing you can find the problem isn't necessarily a demonstration of expertise like it is in academia, where you're kind of critiquing other work and trying to come to the better solution. Sometimes you just need to take the action and be brave and just roll with it, experiment.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that question back up here because I think that's something I kind of want to focus on. So Nicole, she asked like what new skills that we should be aware of as we're going into this. And so from what I'm hearing, right, it's not necessarily like you don't need to learn a new teaching skill. You're probably like brush up on your tech.
Yeah.
And like if you're and like just like get to know the lingo of learning and development, like just doing that research, like honestly spend a couple hours doing some Google stuff. But then it like I think, Nicole, like you really hit it there, that you kind of have to learn how to value yourself. You have to kind of break that habit and realize, no, I should be looking at these measurable statistics. Academics are afraid of numbers and industry lingo, like return on investment and like that those phrases. Embrace them. Because I mean, higher ed is using them in administrative offices, right? You should be using those about yourself as well, because you are an investment, and you have to learn how to value yourself. And that is number one, is just getting that confidence, back.
There's one more thing I wanted to add really quick.
Please.
It's not necessarily a skill you have to learn, but moving from higher ed to corporate, something you're going to encounter a lot more of is working with other people. So for example, when I moved into healthcare, I by no means understood healthcare at all, and I'm still learning it. I've learned a lot. But you rely on other people to be your subject matter experts and to feed you the content and the information that you need to build training. So in teaching or in higher ed, you are the source of the information and you know the content and you understand it. But in corporate, you rely on those other people a lot more, which gets a little tricky sometimes. But for the most part, people who are helping you are really good about it. But it's just something else you got to keep in mind, that you're not the only source of information in corporate.
Yeah.
Interview skills, so important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's, we kind of alluded to to it as well. Like one of the things that you can do to learn about these different positions, or to go on LinkedIn and to ask people who are doing those things, like, hey, can I like talk to you for 20 minutes and just see what you do, and how do I talk about it, like in that kind of thing as well. So for our audience, we're kind of wrapping up, and I have some questions that are coming in from the audience, so keep those coming as well. And those who entered will have an opportunity to win, or asked a question will be entered to win something in our raffle. 30 minutes with either Laura, Nicole, or Tameka about like learning what you can do to move forward. And so keep those questions coming. And we're going to start off with this one right here. This one, oh, where did it go? It was like one that was like really touching to my heart. Okay, this one right here is from Sammy. So when do you feel the most creative in doing your role and your organizations? Like, kind of like we talked about, like some of the things that are fun, but like when do you get to be the most creative?
That's so tough.
Yeah, Laura. No, I mean, not Laura, unless you want to.
No, I mean, I can.
Yeah.
I definitely feel most creative when, it sounds awful to say, but when my deadline isn't the next week or the following week after, because then I have the time to explore the creative ways that we can present that information that somebody will remember it. So recently I've had a lot of projects where it's like really tight turnarounds, which is common and it happens, and totally fine with that. But I feel most creative when I have a little bit more time where I can say, hey, I've heard of this cool thing. Let's see if we can make that work. That's my absolute favorite part.
Anybody want to add that before we go on to another one?
My creativity is all over the place. So it might be in the beginning. It might escape me in the middle. It might show up at the end. It's all over the place. I'm trying to get that thing together.
Yeah, I think, we get to express it in so many different ways, which is a really cool part about this job. So I don't know if there's any like one time, but when I have a hard problem to tackle, or like Tameka was talking about topics that people think are really boring and you make those fun, or you toss out the course and you come up with this really interesting solution, those make me feel awesome and creative. So there's lots of them.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Let's go with this question. This one is from Benjamin Mead. He asks, what has surprised you the most about working in the corporate world? And like the word corporate is seen in higher ed as kind of like a boogeyman. So what have been some of the exciting things that have kind of surprised you in that move?
I guess I can speak to this one. Oh, what was the question again?
Yeah, no, I'll put it back up there. It says, what has
surprised
surprised you the most? Yeah.
What surprised me the most? So, wow, that is a really good question. I think what surprised me is that not every instructional design job is the same at every corporation you work at. What do I mean by that? Some corporations just their understanding or their adaptation of instructional design is different than, say, the company I now work for. So just a little bit of vulnerability. I left one corporate opportunity because I felt like it wasn't as classic of an instructional design role as I wanted my role to be. What do I mean by classic? I was looking for a position in instructional design where I get to, I'm not just the LMS administrator, or I'm not just the person that's pushing the learning to the learner. I'm not just the developer behind the scenes, creating the learning, but I'm really having this holistic opportunity to investigate whether training is the solution or not. Analyze, design, develop the whole ADDIE model, analyze, design, develop, implement, and then evaluate. And where I am now just really, really, really allows me the opportunity to be a well-rounded instructional designer. I'm not just kind of an instructional designer who's just doing a piece of the instructional design role. Rather, I'm able to experience a holistic opportunity in instructional design, and that only makes me more marketable as a professional in the field. So if there's one thing I'll say about corporate world is that although you see all these job announcements out here for an instructional designer, the way that that's understood at a specific corporate company is very different. And I encourage you to really, in your interviews or as you are looking at job opportunities, interview them as much as they are interviewing you. And don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. Don't be afraid to probe a little bit and ask about the day-to-day operations and, well, what is your understanding of being an instructional designer? You know, I tell folks all the time, go there, be your best advocate, get a general understanding of what that job entails at the corporation you're applying to.
Absolutely. And I'll also add that in addition to that, wholeheartedly agree with Tameka. I personally prefer corporate. I've worked in higher ed, and I prefer corporate because they're so unique. So I've worked at a couple different companies. One of them was one of like the 5 largest companies ever. And the culture there was so different from where I am now. Like the company that I'm at now, I would not be surprised at all if they put a slide in the office from the 5th floor to the 1st floor tomorrow. Not at all surprised. But that's because that's the kind of culture that they have. And what I like about corporate is that you can look for companies that match your own values. So like for me, I value that kind of fun at work where other people want to be more professional and buttoned up and in like traditional cubicles, nobody talks to me. Like that's fine for some people, but that's not where I wanted to be. I wanted to be in a place that really values like teamwork, communication, fun, all of that stuff. So I personally prefer corporate because I feel like they have the ability to be more flexible with their values and with their culture. Whereas higher ed, there's an expectation that's been defined very clearly, and there isn't really room to deviate.
Exactly, Lori. Oh my God, Lori, you just
hit the nail on the head, huh?
I mean, because there's really not a lot of opportunity to be creative, if you will, in higher ed. Things have to kind of be checked off. And what if I don't know if you can really do solutioning in higher ed. Whereas you can actually do solutioning, you know, to a problem. What do I mean by solutioning? There's a problem, and now you are supporting that problem by creating a solution to it using training or learning and development as the solution. It's little to none will you be able to do that in higher ed. Their courses have to come out on a conveyor belt, basically. And you don't have opportunity to deviate much from the plan. Some corporations still too, though, work that way as well. They're like, don't touch our stuff. We like it just the way it is. These are the questions that you have to kind of ask and explore and do your own research on. Yes. Am I going to be able to be creative and bring some new ideas to the table? And you could kind of tell that from the interview and from the phone screenings, how the culture of this company, like Laura, I'm very culture conscious. And it's got to fit who I am. Instructional design, a lot of it is about fit. I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, but I'm just so passionate about that.
You're absolutely right. Totally agree. I could talk forever about it.
I think the other thing that like really surprised me and pleasantly was just how appreciative people are generally of your work in the corporate space. I think in higher ed, you know, maybe I don't know, there's this idea that like we are, you know, corporate's the boogeyman. They just want money. They don't care about people. But in general, I found it to be much the opposite. There's always, you know, the narcissist CEO stereotype or whatever. But most of these people are in business because they really have this vision and they really want to help people through whatever product or service they're providing. And it's really important to them. And so when you can help them with training design, or you have maybe it's like a B2C, right? Business to consumer. So you're helping their clients learn something. They really appreciate that work. But on the flip side, and again, totally generalizing, but I know that when I worked in the Writing Center and I worked with faculty, they weren't always as open. They thought they were the experts in teaching and you were basically there just to create their multimedia. Or if I was, you know, since I was at the Writing Center, you were just there to like make sure their students got every grammatical error correct, which half the time weren't grammatical errors. They were just style choices, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. And so, you know, I'm not going to throw professors or like academia totally under the bus, but I do think what Laura and Tameka said is just really important. In higher ed, you are taking work from somebody who believes themselves to usually be a learning expert and may not be as amenable to new ideas, whereas in corporate, they're just so appreciative. They're like so excited to have someone who can help them turn these really complex ideas like manufacturing or aviation or soft skills training into something people can learn from.
Yeah, and solve their problems. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would the idea of being appreciated, like not only by the people that you're working with, the learners, right? Like, I mean, I always get like, you know, a nice thank you note from a student, but like having it reciprocated like from your peers, I think is just something that I mean, that's a lesson that could be learned from corporate. Ironically, right? We think it's the other way around often. Well, that's all we have, the time that we have. If you can't see the winners already, congratulations. We have it's gonna be so slow because I can't remember them off the top of my head. We have Nicole Cooper, Benjamin Mead, and Brittany Horton. Congratulations. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a message, and I will make sure that we get everything partnered up. And thank you so much for Laura, Nicole, and Tameka for joining me. I really appreciate. Here's some great just some love from our people. Thank you for all the answers. They really resonate with us. Nicole is saying you're definitely addressing my concerns. I'm going to embrace them.
Hey.
Yeah. And then just like and yay. Right? So thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna boot you off the screen, and then I'm gonna go ahead and close this out. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing that knowledge. And if you, all of our listeners and watchers, please reach out to them and connect with them on LinkedIn and start making your presence known there. So thank you again. I'm going to let you wave and say goodbye.
Thank you so much.
All right. See you later. Here we go. I'm so good at button pushing. Okay, there we go. I'm just constantly amazed by how great people are being in a position where I was compelled to leave academia because of COVID, and being laid off from our positions. My wife was laid off as well from her university job. Like I said this in the beginning, that you have to connect with people. Please connect with people, and not just for the reason of getting a job, but because there are people that want to be there to support you. Laura, Nicole, and Tameka are all some of those people, and I'm very grateful that I've been able to find this community that I just I'd hoped that would be there in academia, but just it wasn't, because it's a hard situation. So if you're in that position like I am right now, hopefully you're not living in your parents' basement like I am. But if you are, you're not alone. Next week we have a great panel again. So that's going to be with Samantha Klein, Vicky Sherwood, and Jennifer Beach. We're going to be talking about how do you know it's time that it need to leave academia. Thank you so much for tuning in. All of these are going to be available on YouTube. We're not going to plan on taking them down. I'm all about open access, free stuff. And so please share it and have a great day, everybody. Thank you.